Ragin Cajuns podcast. I'm Jeff Schneider, joined by a very, very special guest. He is the Associate Director of Sports Medicine for Louisiana Ragin Cajuns, BJ Duplantis. How are you doing?
Great, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
So, getting a chance to enjoy this amazing Louisiana weather. I mean, it's not often you get nice, cool, breezy Louisiana weather.
It's not often I get to get outside. Son and I don't get along. Pollen allergens don't get along. That's why I like the climate-controlled environment of men's basketball.
So you've been an athletic trainer for a while. Let's go back to the beginning where you got your starts. What was it got you into this field?
It's a long story. It's an interesting story. I was in middle school and trying to think how to cut this story short, but I was sitting with my right leg underneath my left leg, kind of crossed in the desk, and started feeling a burning pain. And it got worse. I stood up. Well, I had burning pain, shooting pains in both legs.
Wow.
Asked the teacher, could I go to the office? Which was not, it was unusual for me to ask the teacher to go to the office. Mm-hmm. They were usually sending me to the office. So she knew something was wrong when I asked to go to the office. Anyway, I waited till the hallways cleared. When the bell rung, I was trying to walk down the hallway, and we were upstairs, and I was kind of bouncing off the lockers because I had no real balance. And I went to take a step down the stairs. My knee hit my chin.
Wow.
Like, it was light as a feather. I didn't have control. I grabbed the railing, almost fell down, and I had to scoot down the stairway. I make it to the front office. They look at me and, what did you do this time? And I was like, no, ma'am, something's wrong. And they could tell, like, something was wrong. They called my mom. My mom was an elementary school teacher. She comes to pick me up. By the time she comes to pick me up, I have burning, shooting pains, both legs up and down, barely walk. We get to the car. We go to the hospital. From there, the only thing that would relieve the pain and stuff in my legs is when I would stand up. So the car ride into New Orleans was about 20, 25 minutes from Chalmette, where I'm from, and I couldn't stand up. As soon as we got out the car, I could stand up, but I was very wobbly. We go into the emergency room. They bring me into the back. They grab a wheelchair. They roll me in. They put me by the bed, and they say, okay, can you stand up? All right, I kind of get in the bed, and I'm laying there. All of a sudden, the worst burning, shooting pain you can imagine goes through my legs. So I go to stand up. When I go to stand up, I collapse. I hit the ground. I was paralyzed from the waist down for about 2.5 weeks.
And nothing before this point you'd ever
felt? Nothing caused it. It wasn't in a car wreck. I wasn't in any kind of accident, anything. The doctors didn't know what was going on. I remember a doctor doing some tests on me on the bottom of my foot. They held a lighter on the bottom of my foot. I couldn't feel anything. They were pinching, sticking, and I couldn't feel anything.
What was going through your mind at this point?
I didn't know what was going on. I had an MRI for the first time. They actually pulled MRI was fairly new. This was in the mid to late 90s. And they pulled the radiologist off of a plane. He was actually heading out of town for a conference, and they pulled him off the plane because he's the only one that knew how to run the MRI machine. And they did a full-body MRI. They couldn't figure out what was going on. Got admitted to Children's Hospital in New Orleans and stayed in ICU for about 7 days. And they ran a gambit of tests on me, a spinal tap. They did a couple more MRIs, full-body MRIs, a number of things. A neurologist came up with a very loose diagnosis of transverse myelitis, which is the inflammation of the spinal cord, usually caused by some kind of trauma, but not uncommon to just kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, because you didn't have trauma to begin with.
Right. So they didn't really nail it down to that was the diagnosis, but that's what she had believed all along. Well, it was kind of a blessing in disguise that all of this had happened because, like I said earlier, I wasn't the best student, wasn't the most well-behaved person, so I really didn't have good goals and mindset at the time. Didn't really care about school. I was always in trouble, and this happened. Well, from this, I wasn't allowed to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I got out of ICU. I go into the regular hospital. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm rolling the hallways and everything. And my teachers came and visited me. My classmates came and visited me. Friends, family. And went to one physical therapy session. And they had a psychologist come in. And I remember telling the man, look, there's nothing wrong with my mind. It's my legs that don't work.
Yeah.
If you can't fix my legs, I don't want to deal with you. And he's like, no, I just want to talk to you and stuff. Well, from talking with him and doing some different tests, they figured out that I had a learning disability.
Wow.
Dyslexic, math, reading, and asked me certain questions. I was like, yeah, how did y'all know that I have trouble doing certain things? And they're like, well, from these tests.
Yeah, it had been never posed to you before.
Right.
I'm assuming.
And just looking at him like, what are y'all doing? So went to one physical therapy session, and they had told me that I asked them when I could leave. Well, apparently the doctors were telling my parents that I may never walk again. They don't know what's causing it. They don't know if I would ever walk again. They were preparing my parents to try to get the house accommodated for a wheelchair and my needs that would arise. So one night a priest walks in, and he has some bones of a saint, and I can never remember the name of the saint. And he asked me do you mind if I pray over you? And I was like, okay, sure.
Yeah, you get a little skeptical maybe?
Well, right, I was just like, fine. Well, he says a prayer. That next day, I was supposed to go to physical therapy. Well, I woke up with the worst headache I've ever had in my life. Horrible. Horrible pain. Just tears, worst migraine, nauseous, everything. So I called the physical therapy place downstairs, and I said, look, I'm not going to make it. I feel horrible. Okay. I tried to go to sleep. They finally gave me some medicine. I went to sleep. When I woke up, my legs had this tingly feeling.
Oh.
Kind of like if you go in the cold tub and you come out the cold tub, you have that numbness, tingling, and it's like things are starting to react again. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what my legs felt. It was very cold, but things were tingling and nothing. Yeah. So I was like, man. Well, I stood up and I took a couple steps, and I was like, called the physical therapy place, said, look, can we try to do some things? I went to one session. They had me on a strap. We did some walking. Mm-hmm. And then asked the doctor that night, and she said, if you can walk down from your room, which I was at the very end of the hallway, to the nurse's station and back, you can get out. The next day I walked. Wow. Now, I looked like Bambi. I looked like a newborn deer.
But you did.
But I walked, and she looked at me, and I said, I'm going home. You told me if I could walk there and back. It wasn't pretty. And they sent me home. Well, from that, I was restricted. So, no sports. Wasn't allowed to play sports.
Were you a kid that played a lot of sports growing up?
No. I was always in trouble. I wasn't the best kid, like I said, and I was always in trouble. So my mom said, you want to play sports? No, not until you do better. Pick your grades up. Mm-hmm. Stop misbehaving in school. You
got to have that goal.
Well, apparently I just wasn't cut out to do that, and I could never get myself straight. But I always wanted to, and try out for the baseball team, and the baseball coach said, hey, before we even get started, if you've had more than 2 detentions this year, you can leave now. Me and one other kid that I was always in detention with got up and left. So I never got the chance to even play sports. Uh-huh. So when I get out of this, now I'm devastated. Like, the chance to try to even play sports is you can't.
Yeah.
But like I said, it was a blessing in disguise, because now I had some accommodations that were met for me that I didn't even know I needed. And some resources were available to me. And they told me that I had to go to adaptive PE. Well, what is adaptive PE? You can't do regular PE. So I said, well, what is that? And so they told me that, kids with special needs, you're going to go PE with them. Okay.
I mean, that's got to be devastating.
Well, we didn't
for you,
have
huh?
anybody. Well, we didn't really have anybody at the time that had special needs like that. So I just went and sat in the library during PE. Everybody else was in PE class, and I'm sitting in the library. Well, it wasn't like I was reading. I was just sitting there, and I was like really down.
Nobody was watching you at this
It was
point?
the librarian.
Yeah.
It was the librarian that when PE was over, I'd leave. Well, luckily, one of the kids a new kid came to school and was in a wheelchair. So, okay, well, now we have 2 people in adaptive PE. So they had a coach. They had somebody come in and we play cards. Well, when we went to high school, just so happened that the adaptive PE coach was the head basketball coach, Ronnie Alonzo,
Wow.
Sr.
Yeah.
And he said, look, would you like to be in athletic PE? And I said, Coach, I can't do that. And he said, no, I want you to be a manager for us. I didn't know what that was. I want you to be a manager. So I said, yes, sir. What does that entail? And he said, look, you're going to be a part of the team. You'll get the equipment ready. You'll line up everything. You sweep the floor. You travel to every game. You're going to get all the gear. You're a part of the team. You're in athletic PE. But you don't need to sit in a room playing cards and stuff like that. Yes, sir. But he said, you have to keep your grades up.
Got that motivation again.
Yes, sir. Really wasn't the greatest student still.
Mm-hmm.
But at my high school, we had a learning center that helped with accommodations. So when I had a test, I needed extended time. Instead of sitting down in the classroom with everybody else, I would go up to the learning center. They'd bring my test up and let them take the test. Well, extended time. If I didn't understand a question, I could raise my hand and say, okay, I'm reading the question this way. It doesn't make any sense to the answers. They would read it in a different way. Oh, well, why didn't it say that? In my mind, it said something different, but it
Absolutely,
actually
yeah.
says this. Well, my grades picked up. They still weren't the greatest, but the grades picked up, so I was able to be the manager. Had a blast. I loved it. I was part of the team. I didn't really enjoy sweeping the floor and getting the balls out and stuff like that. Well, one day, a guy walks in the locker room right before a game, and he tapes an ankle. He checks. He says, does anybody need anything else? Everybody okay? All right, Coach, if you need something, let me know. And he walks out. Who's that guy? Oh, he's our athletic trainer.
First time you'd ever met him.
First time I saw him, met him, man, that's kind of more along the line what I'd like to do. So I go track him down. Well, come to find out, he's a student in high school just like me.
Wow.
And I said,
And this had never been presented to you before?
I never knew anything about it. And so I said, excuse me. My name's BJ. And he said, hi, I'm Dave Paulette. And I said, what is it you do? And he says, oh, I'm athletic trainer. I said, I'm a student athletic trainer. I said, oh, you're a student here? I'm a junior. I'm a senior. No, junior at the time. And he said, can I help you? And I said, man, I'd like to do what you do. If you're really interested, meet me in the spring at football. So did my first year of basketball. It was awesome. Had a blast. Talked to Dave. In and out. Went to spring football practice. He looks at me and says, man, you showed up. I said, I told you I was. He taught me how to tape. He introduced me to our actual athletic trainer, Dave Giardina, who ran a physical therapy clinic in town. And he was the certified that would come out to the school when something serious happened. He trained the student athletic trainers. At the time, you could do that. Now it's against the law.
To handle the simple things.
To handle simple things. If something major came up, you call me immediately. All the coaches knew. Call. He would come from the clinic, check on everything. Introduced me to Mr. Dave, and Mr. Dave got me into Tulane sports medicine camps over the summer. He was a presenter.
Actually, they camp for just sports medicine.
I didn't know that either. So he brought me to that, and I said, man, are there more of these? And he said, well, actually, Southern Miss does a summer camp, a 3-day summer camp in June. Man, signed up, went, had a blast. Well, it's kind of funny. It's kind of ironic. Dave Paulette graduates.
Mm-hmm.
I get the keys to the car, so to speak. I'm the student athletic trainer at Chalmette High School. And Dave comes to UL. He worked under Mr. Porsche, our old head athletic trainer for 28 years. He was a student under Mr. Porsche. So it was kind of ironic at the time. Man, I thought that was great. This is where I wanted to come as an undergrad. So now I had a goal. Man, you could do this in college?
Yeah.
I had no clue about this profession, anything. And wait, I can go to college?
But you just kept finding out more and more.
Now, my grades still weren't the best. Stopped getting in trouble. You know, I did enough. I never really had the goal of going to college, and then all of a sudden I was like, wow, my sophomore year, no, I can go to college and do this? Yeah, so I got my grades in order to where I needed to be able to get into college. And my senior year came, and I sent out some little letters and resumes and stuff to every school in the state, and I took one visit and wound up at Northwestern State with Ed Evans. And toured the campus, loved it. Amazing. I had other campus tours set up. I called them and said, thank you, but I'm going to Northwestern State. Mr. Porsche, our old head athletic trainer, calls me up and says, Barry J., congratulations, I got you on my staff. And I said, Mr. P., I appreciate the offer, sir, but I'm going to Northwestern State. You what? I have a scholarship for you. Well, I appreciate that, sir, but I would never make it there. It's too close to home. And my buddy Dave Paulette. Oh,
absolutely.
He was here, and he was struggling in class, and he was a way better student than I was. Well, he was partying. He was living the life.
Well, and you know, if you came here, you would be in with your buddy.
And I knew exactly I would not make it. So I needed to go to a place that was far enough away from home, and Natchitoches was far enough away from home for me to succeed. So I gave myself the best opportunity to succeed. And like I said, it all worked out. I had a blast. I loved every minute of being in Natchitoches.
Was it still difficult for you in college, though?
No. College was fun. I was fortunate enough to get there my freshman year. I had no clue what STEM units were. I'd only seen them in the physical therapy clinic, but I never got to use one. So the first day I walk in the door at Northwestern State, it was trial by fire. And Ed Evans, our head athletic trainer, said, all right, go hook that athlete up, ice and stem. And I looked at him. Yes, sir. Had no clue what I was doing.
No clue at all.
Well, luckily, by the grace of God, the athlete that was sitting on the table, his name is Paul Papillon. He was a track athlete of ours. I relate him to Caleb Glenn. You know Caleb Glenn on football,
Absolutely,
schematics.
Yeah.
Super smart, knows everything about everything. If you're doing a modality on him, he knows the who, what, when, where, why about it. Paul Papillon was that guy for us. I got you, man. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to take this pad. And he walked me through the entire step.
Now, if it had been a different student athlete, you might have been in trouble.
Oh, he would have been like, what are you doing? This guy don't know. Ed, what's going on? Probably yelled at me. Whatever. Don't worry about it. Well, one of our GAs saw Paul walking me through, and she comes over and she says, hey, look, you ever done this before? Ma'am, I'm going to help you out. So, and she thanked Paul, and so went. And that was my introduction to using modalities. And so from then on, I was like, okay, I'm going to make it my mission to figure out how to use every single thing, because I don't ever want to be put in that awkward position where an athlete
has to tell you what to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So luckily I had some great ladies that worked at Northwestern State. Our assistant athletic trainer at the time, Linda Stark, she's now Linda Bobo. She was our assistant, and she was tough as nails. She was about 5 foot, and she would just ride my butt like nobody's business. Kelly Henderson, Amy McGladry, Jill Whitehead, Rusty Doradics, Wyatt Taylor. Those were GAs. Well, they were like, man, everything to me. Those were just like, they're students, they're graduate assistants, but they're athletic trainers. Like, that's what I wanted to be like, and they would just ride my butt.
What kind of staff size was there at Northwestern State?
Ed Evans and Linda Stark.
And it was all students otherwise?
The rest was graduate assistants and student help. I was the first freshman, if I remember correctly, that they had actually had, like, first true freshman to come into the athletic training room in years. Well, our football team, there was a couple of guys from my hometown that played football and went. They treated me just like I was one of the football players. You know, back then you could do freshman initiation, and when the football players got their heads shaved, they grabbed me. And I had Mike Stone, I'll never forget it, Mike Stone's hand shaved in the top of my head, and I had to walk around school for a week with it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
You were part of the team.
It was part of the team. Coach Sam Goodwin was the head coach at Northwestern State, and he would present everybody with a link. Their thing is, everybody's a link on the chain. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Don't be the weakest link. And at the end of two-a-days, they would present all the football players, the new people, the newcomers, everybody, staff, with a link. And they called me up there. I was the happiest person in the world. I had my link, and I wore it for 4 years with pride every day. I thought that was awesome. They made you feel at home. And then I got my real introduction to college football. Coach Pivoto. I was assigned to Coach Bradley Del Pivoto. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've heard that name.
He coached at LSU for a while.
He did. He's coached numerous places. Well, he was, I think he was the linebackers coach then at Northwestern. Might have been co-defensive coordinator.
Uh-huh.
And we had these things called cows. They're dollies with an ice chest on it, and there's a pump.
That's how you hydrate everybody.
Right, you hydrate everybody. Well, we had 5 or 6 cows. Never used that before till we got there. Well, where we practiced at, it was on practice fields, grass practice fields. Well, the only water source, there was one spigot that was connected to the field house. It was probably about 150, 200 yards away from the practice field. So my cow gets low. I go to fill it up. Coach Pivoto gives his guys a rest, not within the scheduled
not when
rest
you're ready,
period.
huh? Yeah.
Well, he turns around and starts hollering, "Water, water, water," and is going off, screaming and cursing and hollering. And I'm a deer in the headlights, and I'm trying as fast as I can to get the water to come out, and it's not coming out any faster. And I'm trying to throw ice in it, and I run over there and I get it out, and I'm like, "Coach," and he's like, "Guys, this is ridiculous, guys," and he's just going on and on and on and on. And I'm like, I'm gonna get fired. I'm gonna get fired. So I'm hustling. I'm trying to figure out what all of this is going on, and I finish the day, clean up, and I'm walking up the stairs, because to get in the field house, you walk up like a half a flight of steps,
mm-hmm.
and that was where the athletic training room was. And you walk up 2 flights of steps, and that's where the coaches' offices were. I walk up the little half flight of steps to go to the athletic training room. Coach Pivoto's coming out, and he looks at me, and I'm so sorry, Coach. I apologize. No, I should apologize to you. You were trying to do your job. I was frustrated with the guys. It's hot. tensions were high, and I took my frustration out on you, and I apologize, and I will never do that again because you're a valuable member of this team. I said, sir, I just get y'all water. He says, no, sir. You do way more than that. You're such an integral part of this team. That's why you wear that link. You wear that link with pride every day. And I looked at him.
She blew you away.
And he said, BJ, I apologize. You know my name? And every day since then, I was like, wow, Coach P, B, what's up? Everything good? How are your classes? You folks good? Good. If you need something, let me know. But it wasn't just him. It was every single coach. Football, basketball, baseball, soccer. It was a huge family. And I was like, this is amazing. Had a blast. I loved it, and I wouldn't change a thing about it.
So take me to how you got to UL.
Northwestern State. I was lucky enough for them to give me my undergrad degree, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the best student, but I made it through. And I said, let me take a shot and see if they'll give me a second degree. And they did. I actually had gotten a job offer from our now deceased team doctor, Dr. Chris Rich. He worked mid-state orthopedics. He was the team doctor for Northwestern State. And I'm sitting there one day cleaning coolers, and he says, hey, I heard you graduating. Congratulations. You want a job? Sir? Do you want a job? Now, Dr. Rich was 6'7", 300-plus pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Huge man. He played offensive line for LSU. And I'm down on the ground cleaning a cooler, and I'm looking up at this man, and I said, thank you, but no thank you. What? Nobody ever told Dr. Rich no.
Yeah.
I want to get my master's degree. I want to be a GA. Well, what if I told you you could work full-time for me and get your master's?
He gave you that opportunity.
Sir, you come work, cover high schools for me, and I will give you time off to get your master's degree. Yes, sir. And I jumped on it. And I did high school outreach for 5 years, and it was one of the best decisions I made. It taught me how to be independent. Because at Northwestern, I always had Ed, I had the GAs, I had other people to rely on, to ask questions, to bounce things off of, to make sure that I was doing the right thing.
You were back doing what you were doing in high school again.
Right. I'm by myself now, and I'm like, wait, what? I drove out to Northwood Lena. And they said, okay. I was supposed to meet a guy. His name was Chris Basco. He's going to come meet you. He's going to tell you everything, explain everything, introduce you to the coaches. So I get assigned to Northwood Lena. I don't know if you ever know what. It's in Boyce. It's in Boyce.
Yeah, still don't know where that's at.
So the easiest way to explain is when you're headed north on I-49, you get outside of Alexandria, about 20 minutes outside of Ellick. On your right-hand side, you pass up Boyce, and you see a little sign, Lena. Well, there's a blue roof school out in the middle of nowhere. That's Northwood Lena. It's a K through 12 school.
What's the population of that school?
I couldn't even tell you. I'd be lying if I
Maybe
told
a couple
you.
hundred kids.
Right. It's kindergarten through 12th.
Yeah.
So I pull up at this school, and I'm waiting to meet the guy. And so I walk down, and there's a hill, and you walk down, and there's a field house. And I said, I'm here to see Chris Basco. Coach looks at me. And who are you? My name is BJ Duplantis. I'm supposed to meet Chris Basco here. I was told to meet Chris Basco here at this time. Well, he's not done yet, but he'll be down in a minute. You can wait right here for him. Yes, sir. You want to come in? No, sir. I'll wait right here. So I'm waiting. Well, I didn't know. They had twins at the school, the Basco twins.
Yeah.
They thought I was asking about the student. I'm asking about the athletic trainer. That's why they were baffled. Well, Chris Basco shows up, the athletic trainer, and the student at the same time.
Wow.
Met both of them. Chris Pasco, the athletic trainer, hands me a piece of paper. He says, if somebody gets hurt, fill this out, take them to Cabrini. You got any questions? Call Dr. Rich's office. Hops in his truck and drives off. So the head coach, Tom O'Kelly, walks out his office and says, hey, bud, I thought you were asking about the student.
Yeah,
Whatever.
Ultimate confusion. So
sit down and meet, and he's like, look, we really don't do much out here. You know, it's really easy. You know, if you need to leave, you can leave. No, sir, I'm your athletic trainer. What do you need me to do? And I jumped in. Well, they thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread because no one had ever stayed there. No one had ever taken the time. I was there every single day. I did my job. They thought it was great. Well, because I did such a good job, apparently, they took me and moved me to other schools, the problem schools that they had issues with. Mm-hmm. And at one point in time, I was covering 3 different high schools. I had Peabody, Bunkie, and Rapides High. Well, Rapides High is directly between Peabody and Bunkie. Mm-hmm. Same thing, go out there. But it was about building relationships. So that high school aspect taught me about building relationships, how to work on my own, do more with nothing. How do you take care of an injury with no ice machine, no tape because they don't have it in the budget? You're lucky if you had an ace wrap from 1980, 1990. Mm-hmm. They found some old tape in a drawer. Hey, you have that. Your Band-Aids are disintegrating on you. I figured out a way and to take care of the athletes. And the athletes never knew that we had nothing. The coaches were so happy. And it taught me how to have communication with coaches. They were happy that I just talked to them. Well, from that, Mr. Porsche one day calls. Don't tell me no. Sir, I understand you want to work in college athletics, especially basketball. I said, yes, sir, this is my dream to get back in college basketball. Well, I got a spot for you, and you can't tell me no. Sir?
And that's how it started?
And so he brought me here, took my interview, showed me around, and I was kind of on the fence about leaving. At the time, I was working at Tioga High School in Alexandria. Mm-hmm. And I had spoken with the principal about starting a sports medicine class. I saw that was kind of the way things were going in high school, make an athletic trainer permanent, because I didn't like bouncing around a bunch of different high schools. I wanted to kind of be in one spot.
Set your footprint.
Exactly. So I wanted to do the sports medicine route, teach the classes. She was all in. I had training set up for the summer. She ordered the textbooks. Excuse me. Whatever I needed for the class to teach it. The Rapides Parish School Board was like, wait, what? What is this? They were on board. It was kind of going to be like a pilot program. Well, Mr. Porsche called to offer me the job. Well, when at the end of the interview, he offered me the job, and he told me the salary. And I was like, wow, I'm going to have to take a pay cut to come to college. I'm doing high school outreach, and I'm going to have to take a pay cut to come to college.
That's a tough decision, huh?
Well, at my time at Northwestern State, I was fortunate enough to work with Lyle Williams, the brother of the late, great
Lynn Williams.
Lynn Williams. And when I was done, I went back to the equipment room, and Lyle says, what's wrong? And that was the first time I'd ever met Lynn, was that on my interview. I knew of him, but that was the first time I actually met him. And I said, Lyle, I don't know if I can take the job. He says, what do you mean? You want to work college basketball. It's yours. Like, he offered you the job. What's your holdup? Man, I don't know if I can take a pay cut to come work college. And Lynn's chair turned around. And with the biggest grin, he said, son, if you want to work in college athletics, is money worth everything? Is money really worth it? And I was like, he's like, it's not everything. It's about where you want to be and what you love to do, and if it's where you want to be. And so it, like, put things in perspective for me. The next day I called and accepted the job here, and that was in 2007. But I always remembered that. That was one of like the things that, yeah, you might not be making the most money.
Mm-hmm.
And little did I know. I mean, at the time, I'm talking about money. Lynn had been here for years. He, at the time, didn't make anywhere close to what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I had no clue. I figured he was making good money in college. You know, it's a perception that a lot of people have.
Yeah, everybody thinks it's glamorous, and you make that lifestyle.
But he put it into perspective. Is it what you love to do? It's really not about the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the relationships. And it always stuck with me. And so when I got here, the equipment room was like my second home. You know, you've seen me in the equipment room countless hours.
All the time.
Right. It's just because of that. Lynn welcomed me, treated me like I was one of their brothers or nephews, family. And Lyle didn't even get the word to say, didn't get to say a word. But I had the relationship with Lyle, but it was Lynn. That was classic Lynn Williams.
That pulled you in.
Oh, pulled me in, and I was like, I'm sold.
You talk about relationships. Obviously, one of your biggest relationships is those that you have with your coaches. You talked about high school, how you had great relationships with the high school coaches you worked with, and then even at Northwestern State, great relationships. Now, I'd say you have two pretty strong relationships now with the golf coach, Theo Slyman, and then, of course, men's basketball coach, Bob Marlin.
Absolutely. If I had to pick coaches to work with,
Yeah.
I got the two easiest. Coach Marlin is excellent to work with. We had the Southland connection, and I remember the epic battles of Northwestern State and Sam Houston. So when he came here, I knew who Coach Marlin was. I didn't have to figure out who is this guy, how is he going to be. I knew. He is the monotone, stone-faced Coach Marlin. And I was like, okay, he's tough as nails. I got to be on my A game. I have to be very detail-oriented. I have to list him out everything.
Yeah.
And I remember our first meeting, Coach was running behind because he had meetings out the wazoo with everybody. And I had printed out a list of the injury report and everything. And I think my slot was 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
An hour and 45 minutes later,
You walked out?
I walked out. I had everything typed out. I had him a copy. I had myself a copy. And I went down the list of injuries. Who had what was going on, what would they do, this and that. Had a great first meeting. I was like, wow, I got to bring my A game because I got to keep it like that. But Coach Marlin has been excellent. He asks great questions. He always has the student-athlete's welfare in his best interest, whatever it needs to be done to make sure that they're taken care of, whether it's good or bad for the team. He's never going to jeopardize an athlete for wins or losses. It's about making sure that that kid is taken care of for life, not just here when he leaves here. And he's been excellent to deal with on that. There's some times I have to say, Coach, hard decision, like this person can't go. And he's never bucked. He's never tried to question. He just said, okay, we'll talk about it. Whatever. And then Coach Slyman, Theo, just as easy. Great coach. Asked more questions than Coach Marlin.
Uh-huh.
But Theo's like me. He likes information. Knowledge is power. So I know that I have to give Theo a lot more information than I have to give Coach Marlin. But that's all in knowing how to communicate with people.
Leans on you a lot?
More so just about life.
Yeah.
Life in general.
So not just an athletic trainer, but kind of a life coach too.
I think we both lean on each other. Coach Marlin, the same thing. We lean on each other at different times. But Thea and I obviously have a different relationship than Coach Marlin. You have a different relationship with every coach you deal with. Mm-hmm. But Coach Marlin and I talk about life stuff. But Theo and I talk more about life because, let's face it, golf doesn't get injured as much as men's basketball. So we just take the opportunity. Look, I just wanted to call and say, hey, I know I don't have anything, injuries or anything like that. I'm just calling to check on you. How's everything going? Or he'll call, shoot me a text. I don't know if you ever texted Theo. You may or may not get a response from Theo.
Just depends.
Right. It just depends on what's going on. Coach Marlin's quick to hit you back with a text. So it's funny, you got to learn the communications. But I couldn't have asked for two better coaches to have to deal with, work with, because they're great people. They love the student athletes. They treat them like they're their family, and they have the best interest of the student athletes in this university. I'm lucky. I'm very lucky.
You've been with Bob a long time. What's your favorite Coach Marlin story? Now, I'm putting you on the spot now.
That is a great question. Man. There's so many great stories. Everybody probably expect I'd say a funny story.
Yeah.
But
which one hits home for you?
Ragin Gary. We're at FAU. Ragin had probably one of the most traumatic leg injuries that I've had here. Not the worst I've ever seen and dealt with, but the one here. And we didn't know if he was ever going to play again. And Coach Marlin inherited basically damaged goods, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And when I met with him in that hour and 45-minute meeting, he was one of the people we talked about because it had happened
prior to him
coming, right before he came. And Ragin was doing great in rehab, and right before official practice, or the first day of official practice, Ragin does a spin move, felt something that didn't feel right, and his knee swelled. Okay. Got him in, doc. There's another issue. It's going to require surgery. Not as extensive as the last surgery he had. It's going to require surgery. So we get that taken care of. And Ragin muscles through, starts playing. And it was Coach's, what was it, second year, first year? I'm trying to remember. Everything's kind of mush. All these seasons, 12 seasons.
Oh, they run together,
blend together, but I'm trying to remember.
Was that the year of the streak?
I don't remember if it was or not. I think it was the next year.
Okay. It had to have been the streak year.
It had to be the...
It was probably, I think it was his first season.
It must have been.
Yeah.
We're at FAU, and Ragin's playing in the game, and his knee locks. Not uncommon. It was weird. It would just kind of like lock.
No, when you
have
say
to move it around, like
when you say lock, explain that to the layman.
Okay, so when your knee's a hinge.
Yep.
When you bend the knee, he couldn't fully extend his leg out anymore. It would stay
almost in an L shape.
No, it was like 45 degree. It was weird. It's just his leg would not extend fully anymore. It was like something was blocked. Well, it would do that because his cartilage was so bad, the damage and stuff was bad, and it would just kind of lock. Well, usually I kind of lay him down, move it around, it would unlock, be fine, he'd go back in the game if he felt okay. I couldn't get it to unlock. And he looked at me and said, I am not coming out of this game. I'm playing. And I was like, absolutely not. You can't even straighten your leg out. And I'm arguing. We arguing on the sideline at FAU. And I don't know if you've ever been to FAU.
It's not very big.
Well, right. It's a small gym, but their dance line. They were known for their dance line. And they're right there next to you, strategic planning.
Oh,
and they wear the skimpiest outfits possible, and they like share. They did 6 or 7 changes during the game.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And they standing there, and we are arguing. We are going at it, full-blown yelling, screaming. And I'm like, absolutely not. He says, you watch me. And he hops up. And I said, oh, yeah, let's see. And he limps down to the thing. Coach, he tapped him. Coach puts him in, unbeknownst. And I'm like, no. He single-handedly goes out and defeats FAU. And I was like, Ryan, your career might be over for this one. I don't care. I'm not going out like that. And he fought. So the game's over. He's got tears rolling down his face. We won. Mm-hmm. We get him back into the locker room. He's sitting there. He's just got tears. And he's in absolute pain. And at the time, I got him packed in ice and, getting appropriate pain medicine from the other team when I needed from, with permission from the doctors and mm-hmm. taking care of him. And Coach Marlin came over and just gave him the biggest hug and said, I appreciate everything, you do. We didn't know if that was his last game or not, but you got us. You are what it's about. Mm-hmm. Hell of a performance. And that's one thing, just like he went over there and he just gave him the biggest hug. And, we get him on the bus. Like, that's just like Coach Marlin he knew what that kid might have sacrificed and just not
to help the team.
Great job. No, he went over there, hugged that kid, knowing that he might have played his last game, which fortunately for us, he didn't. But that's the Coach Marlin story that sticks. Like, that image sticks out. And he's talked about LaRyan multiple times mm-hmm. about he stuck it to FAU and how hard it was and how tough. And that's what being a Cajun is, and that's what it means. And like that's one of my favorite things with Coach Marlin is that relationship that he has is different with every player, like it is with me. But you saw like the emotion, the raw emotion, and a lot of people don't get to see that from Coach Marlin. They see him, stoic and very reserved and stuff. But that's the side of Coach Marlin, and that's the story that sticks out to me. It's kind of weird that would be the story that sticks out to me of all the stories.
All the stories you have, yeah.
I have a ton of stories, but that is the one thing about Coach Marlin that like sticks out to me.
You talked about traveling. You were at FAU for that game. Mm-hmm. Talk about traveling with the team and what's that like for an athletic trainer?
It's interesting. Our travel budget is not the best. It's not the worst. But we make the best of the bad situation. We bus a lot and making sure where the bus is loading, or we loading from the Cajun Dome, or we're loading from Monclaw. You got to bring drinks for the entire duration mm-hmm. of the trip if it's a bus trip.
Got to make them hydrated. Make sure they stay hydrated.
Right. So in order to help the budget out, instead of having to go buy product, we're fortunate enough that Coca-Cola, we have a partnership with them, and mm-hmm. we have the trade out, and we load up the drinks. So we load up drinks, Powerade, water, as much as we possibly can on the bus, and the travel trunks. Mm-hmm. Brian Davis, our baseball athletic trainer, he laughs at me all the time. He says, could you possibly bring anything else with you? Because I have 2 huge Pelican cases. One's full of Normatec recovery items, Normatec, Theraguns is in one case, mm-hmm. and then all my tape, rehab equipment.
Stem and ice stuff.
Well, not ice. Can't travel with ice, Jeff. I don't know if you ever tried to travel with ice. It's gonna leak everywhere.
Well, the equipment,
stem units, ultrasound units. Mm-hmm. You name it. I try to think of everything I could possibly need to make sure our guys are in the best, given the best care, and put in the best position to be able to win. Treat them. Try not to skip a beat from being at home and on the road. And it's a lot of stuff. And I'm very fortunate that our staff allows me to take a student with me, and helps me load the managers. Daniel Roy, our assistant, graduate assistant, they all help. Everybody pitches in, but the bus trips, the plane rides,
Long hours.
long hours. There's some days you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you arrive, so we leave at 4:30. So I'm up at 3. I get to the Cajun Dome if we leave from the Cajun Dome at 3:30.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure all of my stuff is
Ready to go.
packed, set, ready to roll, bring it out to where the bus is going to spot, and load the bus before the guys even get there. That way, when the guys get there, okay, we're kind of reminders, don't forget this, don't forget, do you have this, do you have this, do you need this? And then we all on the bus. Get on the bus, we go to the airport. You go to the airport, and Lafayette, unfortunately, doesn't really have many direct flights. You got Atlanta, Houston, and Dallas. So we're 9 times out of 10
Connection, yeah.
Well, sometimes the connection is 2 hours. Sometimes it's 6. Sometimes it's 5. Sometimes it's 4.
And hopefully you're fortunate to catch your connection.
Exactly. You're running on the other side of terminals. You're trying to catch a meal in between. Then you get to the place, and you got to get a bus, and you got to ride. You get to the hotel. It's get taped, get back on the bus.
Practice time.
Practice. You practice. You eat. Come back home, shower, or notebooks. They go over the scouting report.
Mm-hmm.
They shower, and I'm trying to squeeze in some treatment time, so I have to make sure I try to prioritize and treat and hope that I can get them in bed by 11, because obviously sleep is very
huge.
important. So, you're up. Say the guys are up at 4, because the guys aren't getting up at 3. It was 4 o'clock to 11 p.m.
They haven't had much sleep.
Hadn't had much sleep, not much to eat. Things have gotten better since we, nutritionists on board. Coach Murphy does an excellent job of making sure that our guys are getting something, that we're getting food. We saw deficiencies, and make sure that we got food now strategically placed, and he calls ahead and, hey, look, we're going to have this window. It might have something waiting for us. Or we know we have a longer layover. Okay, everybody come here. But those are horrible days. On one trip, it took us 13 hours to get to the place. Had we bust, 13 hours.
So you might as well just bust.
Well,
Or not.
It's just one of those things. Bus or not, what's better? Cramming in a plane, kind of getting them to move around in the airport for hours on end. You just exhausted either way.
Well, you're talking big guys, so, I mean, bus or plane, they're going to be confined to a small space.
Now, that's something that's fun to watch. Okay. The vet move is the older guys know you don't go stop to get nothing to eat. You don't stop to go break off to go to McDonald's or wherever in the airport. You go straight to the terminal. Excuse me, ma'am. Sir, whoever it is. Is there an exit row seat available?
Oh.
And usually they kind of like roll their eyes and they look up and,
they
up
see,
and up. Let me check, sir.
They get to be very accommodating.
Very accommodating. But the best is when we have some of the smaller guys that are older and they run up and go get the exit row seat. That's funny because, man, come on. You
The
start
6'2" guys getting a seat over the 6'8"
you don't
guy.
need that. And then they start bargaining. Oh, what you want to give me for, it's funny to watch. And they know the whole time that they're going to give that seat up. But
They're getting some out of it
they
first.
just want, yeah, hey, man.
They did the legwork to make sure it was available.
Supply and demand. It's great. So you watch the older guys. They go straight to it. Get that exit row seat. So, travel's fun. A lot of great times traveling. A lot of bad times traveling.
Talk about any unique situations where you had to set up and do treatment in an area. You're like, wow, I don't even know how I'm going to make this work.
Sean Long at Louisville. We played La Tech here. We beat him. He hurt himself. Put him in a walking boot. I'm like, Coach, I don't know if it's going to be able to go. I'm going to try to do whatever we can. And at the time, I was still using ice for certain things. And I had a stimulator with a little tinge unit that I traveled with. And we're sitting in Louisville's airport, and it's snowing. Just snows everywhere. We land, and snows everywhere, and traffic's backed up. The bus can't get to us. We're sitting there in the baggage claim waiting. And I'm like, man, I start busting out the modalities, and I'm hooking up, trying to find ice. There's nothing down in the baggage claim. You can't get back in. So I was like, I walked outside with an ice bag.
Snow.
Grabbed it in the snow, tied it up, put it on. Coach thought that was the funniest thing ever. So I used snow, do treatment. Every once in a while I've had to tape some people on a bus, but majority of the time my tape's underneath the bus. But sometimes got to make special, you just rush time, so I'll have to finish up something on the bus. I've had to do that. But using the snow to treat, that was a first for me. What else do we have to do?
You end up having to use your room for treatment, right?
Well, right. My room is everything. You come in, it's where the water is, the Powerade, where you get treatment. Sometimes it's just where they hang out.
You can hear all the stories, I'm sure.
One of our former SIDs, he used to be my roommate.
You always room with somebody, right?
I used to always room with somebody. I used to. And one of the former SIDs was my roommate, and he thought it was the greatest thing to sit back and watch treatment and taping. He called it the barbershop, and he used to tell Coach Marlin, he's like, you need to come experience the barbershop, Coach. It's amazing. When Alfred and Sean were here, they would come in. They'd get taped first, and they'd sit. And
they would enjoy the barbershop too.
Well, they would start it. They would start the conversations, or they would continue a conversation we were having. Nothing was off topic, and anyone and everyone was fair game. Some days it was just a good old ribbon session. Some days it was life issues. Some days it was politics. Some days it was a remember when. Remember when we did this? And you start telling stories, and it was...
So you're providing the entertainment while kids are getting treatment.
I provided the entertainment. I think they entertained me more than I entertained them. But I always got accused of being the ringleader. We had a blast doing that, and we still do. It's kind of different, a little bit different now, because things are a little bit more regimented. I get my own room the majority of the time because my beds are used
for treatment.
As treatment. And it's not fair to the person, the sports information or strength and conditioning that's staying with me. They can't do anything. Like, they literally have nowhere to go because
Oh, I've been there.
My bed's taken with 2 guys in it. Their bed's taken with 2 guys in it. I got a guy on the floor getting treatment. I got a guy sitting at the desk getting some kind of treatment. They're all over the place, and it's not a quiet environment. I try to keep it respectful.
As quiet as can, yeah.
Sometimes I'm worse than them. I get a little loud laughing and stuff, but they're like, hey, and I'm like, oops. But we have a good time. You try to make the best of a bad situation. But thankfully, I was fortunate enough to get my own room the majority of the time. And I don't mind sharing. It's just like, hey, look, you got to know what you're getting yourself into. Your bed is going to be used 95% of the time by the athletes. Because that's my job.
That's what it is.
Right.
It's National Athletic Training Month. The great month of the year where you get to thank the people like yourself that go out of your way to make sure student athletes are always healthy and or as healthy as you can get them, and able to compete and perform. So y'all are pretty much unsung heroes because you don't get a whole lot of recognition for what you do, and I know that's not why you get into it, but sometimes you're not always behind the scenes, right?
Unfortunately,
a player gets hurt on the court, and you're now that guy in the spotlight. Do you get texts and calls from your buddies when they see you make an appearance?
yes and no. It's more so former students of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Man, saw you on TV. Look good, whatever. They critique my my evaluation skills if it's on, and I think it's funny. But the majority of my buddies know, like,
That's what you do.
right, it's what I do, and
But was Mom not proud the first time she saw you on TV treating a player?
did Travis tell you to ask me this?
So tell me about it.
Oh, man, the first time I was on TV, that was when I was a student, my freshman year at Northwestern State,
Mm-hmm.
and we were on Fox Sports, I think it was, and it was a nationally televised game.
Who were you playing? Couldn't remember.
I couldn't tell you. And game's over, and I get back to my dorm room, and I lived 200 yards from the stadium.
From the arena, yeah.
I get back to the dorm room, and I have a message on my answer machine.
It was Mom,
back,
huh?
Well, back then you didn't have
Oh,
cell
yeah,
phones.
no cell phones, no texting.
Right, and this is 1998.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that long ago, 20 years.
Only 20.
Right. It seems like yesterday. Check my answer machine, and when my mother started out with Barry, John, Duplantis, she used all four names.
Oh, wow.
I did not raise you like that. I cannot believe you did this. And I'm like, you call me back immediately.
Well, what was the beef?
I didn't know what I did. Well, apparently, the camera panned over and I was on the sideline and I had an itch.
Oh.
And I was scratching the itch, and then
You got cut.
then I spit.
So double dipped.
Oh. And for about 30 minutes, I got blistered through the phone in my dorm room.
So it wasn't even the glamorous you get on TV. It's
No.
your mom has to give you a phone call.
Right. And I was just like, oh, man, that's like, I hated TV games.
So you were trying to find the
Oh,
spot
I
out
was
of-
just
yeah.
like, wow, no. So I just tried to stay out of the camera's angle stuff. Yeah, somebody told you to ask me that question.
So now almost every game's on TV. It's kind of hard to hide.
It is.
And, sometimes people call in to question your bench behavior because you do get a little animated, don't you, on the sidelines?
I don't know if anybody's called and questioned my bench behavior, but I do get animated.
I think there's been highlights pulled up where coaches have had to pull you back
No.
on the bench. Or was it the other way around? I think maybe you were pulling coaches back.
I don't know about that, Jeff. I know I was holding players back when we won the conference tournament championship. Brad Kemp has a great photo that he graciously shared with me, and it hangs in my office of me holding back the guys. But no, I don't think I've
You don't
ever
get
been.
too animated on the sidelines?
No, I'm usually trying to pull John Uribe back, our strength coach, and he gets very animated, rightly so. But we're all animated, That's
It's part of the
bench.
deal.
The bench is the lifeblood of the team, and if your bench is not good and not active,
Mm-hmm.
then your team's not going to be
Well, and that goes all the way down to the end of the bench where you and the strength coach are sitting.
exactly. And so coach will come down and say, "Hey, let's get these guys rolling," And so, all right. But I'll let John take over. He's the young gun, He's a lot younger than I am, more energetic.
But at some point, you were that young gun, right?
One time I used to get on the guys. We take a charge, and our thing is, the guys take a charge, the whole bench gets up.
Mm-hmm.
And one time, a guy took a charge, and nobody stood up, and I went off. Coach just kind of gave me the little side, the fisheye, smirked, when Bobby's like, you really tore into him. I said, that was ridiculous. And he goes, thank you.
You felt pretty proud, didn't you?
I was just like, that was absolutely ridiculous. We take a charge and nobody stands up. And I was yelling at him. I was like, oh, man. But, yeah.
So, athletic training has come a long way since you started, obviously. You kind of talked a little bit, but how much of a challenge is that for you you have to adapt almost all the time?
It's actually one of my favorite parts of athletic training because almost everything I knew as a student has changed completely. I mean, I'm coming back from when you had the bell rung, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you're okay, you don't have any symptoms, your ears aren't ringing or anything like that, after a quarter or so, you can get back in the game. What?
Totally different now.
We what?
Well, how many guys in your time do you think had concussions that y'all just looked it off maybe?
I really don't know if it was that many.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to work with Dave Giardina. His state license number is 0001. He's unofficially the godfather of athletic training in Louisiana. Yeah. Mr. Porsche, he's like 04. Ed Evans, he's like 12. So I was very fortunate enough to work with the best. Hall of Famers in the state. But Dave Giardina, he was on the forefront. Worked with Tulane Institute of Sports Medicine, Dr. Michael Brunet, NFL doctor, second opinion doctor, built up the Tulane Institute of Sports Medicine and what it is today before Katrina, and he was always on the forefront. And I remember we had these boxes, these metal boxes, and it had lights and switches and stuff. Well, that became a baseline test. Unbeknownst to me at the time, that was one of the first baseline tests in the country.
Really?
So he came in, and that was part of our pre-participation physical exam. And you had to do things a certain way, whatever. And the doctors that came over from Tulane couldn't figure out how to turn the machine on.
And they were the doctors.
They're the doctors.
They were the guys who should know everything.
And I was like, really? I said, you do this, this, and this, and you hit this button, and it comes up. What? And then they start their test. And they were like flabbergasted, and I laughed. They all laughed at me. I was like, I'm not a doctor, but, man, I knew how to turn the machine on, and we did that. But we were always on the forefront. We were always cutting edge, trying out new different things. I remember when I was in high school, one of my buddies hit his head, Joe Fall, and he came back, and he was just out of it. I asked him what his phone number was. Just rambling numbers. And I went to the head coach, and I said, he cannot go back in. What? He can't go in. I said, from the classes, the Tulane courses and the Southern Miss summer camps that I went to, and they taught about that. This is before
it became a big deal.
And they all started talking about how if you have these, you cannot let your athletes go in. If you start noticing slurred speech, he couldn't remember numbers, his phone number, his home phone number. He couldn't remember where he lived.
Which is
right. He didn't know where he was at.
And
it's
you have
just
to say,
common sense.
This is back in the day when remembering your phone number was a thing.
Right.
Because now nobody has phone numbers. But back then, you remembered numbers.
Your home phone number. And you couldn't remember his address. He didn't know where he was at. And I'm sitting there arguing with the coach, and the assistant coach, mainly his son. And I said, he's not going back in. You'll have to get me physically removed from here. I'm a student yelling at the coach. And our head coach just said, he's not going to go in, okay? So Mr. Dave got a phone call. I called him, and I said, look, Coach was adamant he was trying to play this guy. He's got a concussion, and he don't need to be doing this. And, and me and Coach got in. He's like, oh, no. And I said, I told him this, and I told him he can't put him in, and he's going to go to jail. And I was...
Wow.
And Mr. Dave kind of said, okay. He said, let's think about this for a minute. Yes, you did the right thing. You just didn't do it the right way.
A learning experience.
huge learning experience. You put it on the coach. You give them the information, and that's one of my first lessons in communicating.
Let them make the decision.
Right. So, but I had the training. Luckily, I had worked with great people that had taught us the right way and gave me knowledge that I'm not just a guy out there taping ankles and putting Band-Aids on and handing out water. I actually had some knowledge. And I was like, whoa. But at the same time, I felt vindicated that you did the right thing. You just didn't do it in the right way.
Absolutely.
And it always stuck with me. But no, like I was very adamant about concussions. The way we treat everything nowadays has just changed. But that's my favorite part.
Yeah, I mean, you got the concussion stuff's a big deal now. It's so many different ways that you can try to get an athlete back up and going. There's cupping, Graston. I mean, you name it. There's different techniques out there.
Yeah. No, there's so many more resources now available, and to try to keep up. And one of my favorite things that we do is we have athletic trainers that come on young, trying to gain experience. They come from other places. And learning techniques and different techniques, modality usage, or ways in which they use modalities is one of my favorite parts. I like learning from them. I like observing.
Explain modalities for a person.
Okay, so a modality is E-stim, ultrasound machines.
What's the purpose of a modality? They have different
The majority
purposes?
is pain management, reduction of swelling. That's the majority of the modality use is to reduce swelling and alleviate pain. But how you utilize those modalities, because back in the day it was ice and stim everything. Well, that was a tried true method, but now there's so much research that shows you that icing is probably not the best thing for. And utilizing stim in a different way. We utilize stim with movement. Movement is a huge thing, keeps the blood flowing. You don't restrict motion, you encourage motion. How do we get the motion if there's swelling and pain? Well, if we can block the pain receptor with the stim, then they can move pain-free more. The more you move, the faster you're going to heal, the more swelling gets out. And it's just a cycle. And I don't know why it's taken us so long in athletic training in the sports medicine world to figure these things out, but it does. I think just tried and true methods were like, oh, it was the go-to. We always we ice bucket, slush bucket. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with ice. There is a time and a place for ice, but the majority of the things do not require ice. You have to become inventive. So your tried and true method of ice and stim doesn't work. You utilize a cupping technique. You utilize a Graston technique, which is an instrument-assisted soft tissue massage. So you utilize
the swelling out.
Right, or you work on an area to get out adhesions. Basically, kind of relate to if you rub your hand on cobblestone, you feel the grooves and the bumps. Well, in the muscle, when you rub your hand over a muscle, you can feel
The bumps.
Well, that's adhesions. So you use the instrument-assisted soft tissue massage to help work out those adhesions that a normal massage may not get out.
Speeds up recovery.
Speeds up recovery, healing time. The athlete just feels better. The pain management is there. There's so many things now available that weren't available 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Well, and most of these student athletes, I mean, you're vital because, I mean, how many student athletes are truly at 100% through the long season?
They get to us broken. The majority of the athletes, if you played sports, and unfortunately for us at a time, and we're kind of starting to see that the generations now, not so much, but the last last few classes, so to speak, they concentrated on one sport at such an early age. Excuse me.
So they come to you broken.
They have athletes that have concentrated on sport-specific, one sport for so long that their bodies are just worn out overuse. The best thing for us is an athlete that played multiple sports, because they're not overtraining those same muscles, those same joints. They're getting the multitude. They're working the gambit of muscles, their joints, in every different plane. But when you concentrate in one sport, say from the time you're 7 or 8, if you're fortunate enough to make it to college,
you're coming with it.
You're coming with something.
Yeah.
You're a ticking time bomb if you hadn't had anything. And if you had some stuff, it's our job to try to keep you pieced together. If you hadn't had anything, it's our job to try to prevent it, which there's so many ways now. Functional movement screening, utilization of programs like Fusionetics. We go through a series of 7 different movements, identifies deficiencies. It gives you out a list of exercises to help correct those deficiencies. Been huge.
So it's not just a simple old physical you used to get.
Nope. It's not the turn your head and cough and, let me check your heart, everything. I mean, our physical has gone from a probably 10 to 15 minute process per kid to an hour and 30-minute process, depending on what they need. Coach Marlin was great and instrumental in helping us get EKGs for every athlete. We had, unfortunately, we had an athlete before he came here, the week before he was supposed to report for summer ball. He passed away on a basketball court from an underlying heart condition that nobody knew about. Well, we were in the works of talking about doing EKGs on all our athletes, but when that happened, Coach was like, whatever we got to do, we need to make sure that our athletes are getting this. Because, we could have potentially caught that had he been here now. But something really good came from something bad.
No doubt.
And in Herman Williams' memory, Coach Marlin was like, we need to do something.
Well, and now you're taking the extra steps.
We do EKGs on every single athlete that we have. We have a great partnership with Cardiovascular Institute of the South, and any needs that we have are addressed by a cardiologist. At Physical, they have a cardiologist that comes and overreads the EKGs. If there's anything that they see needs to be seen in the office, we get them to them. They get it taken care of immediately.
So the student athletes get the best care possible.
We do a phenomenal job. We do whatever we can to make sure our student athletes are getting the best care available to them any and every day. When I first got here, it was 6 of us. We now have 12 athletic trainers on staff. We have a part-time nurse, Miss Julia Lognon, who came over from Student Health Services, and when she retired, we snagged her away, and she's working part-time for us, and she's running the doctor's clinic, which we have a general doctor every single afternoon in the athletic training room during the week. They come to all the games. Orthopedic surgeons, we have them.
And you have great relationships with these doctors.
Unbelievable. The coach, the doctors, we couldn't do our job without doctors. We work under the direction and the supervision of a doctor's guidance. That is state law.
Yes.
You have to. And so if you don't have a great relationship with your doctors, you're doing your athletes a disservice.
Well, your student athletes rely on their care.
Exactly. And so you need to be in tune with those doctors and making sure that they're providing the best care possible for these athletes. I always tell, unfortunately, when an athlete gets hurt, that's usually the first time I meet their parents. Unless I met them on the recruiting trip.
Tough time.
But, how you doing? And they look at me, and I'm like, I hate to meet you like this, but son and daughter's injured. Questions, anything like that. And I'll tell them, look, don't worry. Don't worry about your child. I treat them like they're one of my own. And at the time, well, still don't have one, but at the time I didn't have child.
Mhm.
We're expecting one in September, and I'm super excited
That's
about
awesome
it.
news.
Thank you. But I tell them, I treat your kids like they're my own, because I know when you look at your child, you're not seeing 18, 19, 20-year-old child. You're seeing your 5, your
Mhm.
6-year-old child. Mom, Dad, looking up at you. And they look at me astonished. I said, that's your most prized possession. And we're entrusted with your child. It's my job to make sure that I take care of your child, and you know that they're in the best hands possible. And I wouldn't send your child to anyone that I wouldn't send myself or my own family to.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer in that. And I do. And I can go down the list of our doctors. Hey, I've sent this person, this person, this person, this person. The majority of the time it's Coach Marlin. Coach Marlin goes to every doctor I think we've had. He's more needy sometimes than the players. But it's about the student athlete, because without the student athletes, we don't have a job. None of us in athletics.
Mhm.
And if we don't make them priority, what are we doing?
You talk about, it's about student athletes. You talk about emotion and the care and the pride. You mentioned it earlier, Len Williams. He was the guy who kind of got you here. What that guy has done and what that guy did for you, just talk about that.
It's indescribable. The feeling that you got when you were around Lynn. And at his funeral services the other day, it was a great testament to him, his life, and how he touched people. He just had a crazy way of being able to touch anyone and everyone, from a chair, from a telephone, cell phone. He could touch you and reach you in ways you never really thought of. His genuine love, his care for Ragin Cajun athletics, for people, for his community, his family, and we were his family. He didn't say, "You're like my second family." He would always say, "You're my family." Earlier this year, I had some family problems. My parents, they were in the hospital, both of them at the same time. And was trying to get them moved to different places, and we were having some issues with places and everything, trying to get them in. And I get a phone call one night, and it's Lynn. And I answer, and I said, "What's up, man?" And he says, "Look, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you, and I thank you, because every single time I was in the hospital, every time I had something, you called, you came by, you texted, you showed up, you were there, and I just want to let you know I'm here for you if you need anything. But I appreciate that. You have no idea what it meant to me that you would come to the hospital every single time. I know that's not what you wanted to do, but you came every time I was in the hospital. You'd call and check on me. You'd text me. That meant the world to me. And I just want to let you know that I'm here for you if you need it. I can't do much." You know, Lynn, he would always, "I can't do much," but whatever he
was going to do what he could.
He would do. And he said, "Man, I just, I love you." And thinking back on that, I never told Lynn I loved him. He never told me he loved me. But something compelled him at that time to tell me he loved me. And I was like, "I love you too, Lynn." It was always unspoken. You knew I loved you. Love you like a brother. Same, it was reciprocated. But like to hear it. And so during his funeral, that was one of the things that brought joy to my heart is I told that man, I got to say I love you to Lynn. It wasn't unspoken. He knew it, and he said it to me. And it was just like a comforting feeling that I got to tell somebody that I cared about I loved them. But from that, I realized, when's the last time I told Mom or Dad I loved them? Years. And Coach Marlin always says at the end of practice, usually around the holidays or just whenever, if you're going to go home, make sure that you tell your family, your friends, your loved ones that you love them. Tell them you love them because you never know. You may not get another chance to do it. I'd heard those words hundreds of times from Coach Marlin and never really took it to heart. But a phone call from Lynn Williams opened my eyes.
And it wasn't the first time you opened your eyes.
No, I went, saw my parents the next day in the hospital, and I told both of them I loved them, and my mom kind of looked at me. She's like, I love you too. And she knew that, like, we had not ever said that in years. It's just not, we're not that I love you family. But that's just one of the many good things about Lynn, that, he affords you the opportunities that you would never, ever have other ways. Lynn, our manager, one of our senior managers, Kelvin Jackson Jr., we call him affectionately known as KJJ, kid from New Orleans, St. Aug. We got him on as a equipment manager. Did an excellent job. I went into Big Lynn's office and I said, man, our managers, Jacob Lemonnier, we called him Specs.
Yeah.
And Kelvin Jackson Jr., I said, man, KJJ and Specs, they're awesome, Lynn. Those kids work so hard. They never say no. They fight. They do whatever they have to do to meet the guys' needs. A couple weeks later, Kelvin comes in my office, and he had tears on his eyes. And I said, what's wrong? And he says, thank you. Thank you, man. He gives me a hug. Thank you so much. I said, for what? Thank you for everything. And I'm like, you leaving? And he says, no, thank you. You went and told Mr. Lynn. I don't know what you told him, but you told Mr. Lynn something. And I don't have to worry about school. I'm being taken care of with school.
Wow.
And, I was like, what? He's like, man, I said, I didn't do anything. You did it. But that was the power of Lynn.
Oh, absolutely.
And, it's just reciprocated back. And
when you talk about that power, I mean, we're both fortunate to know how good of a person he was. And, you especially got a chance to bend his ear a lot. But you sit at the funeral and you see everybody he's touched. Mm-hmm. How special does that make you feel that you got that part of him?
It was great. It was a great feeling. And I look at things differently than most people, like I said before, especially funerals and death. Because unfortunately, there was an athlete at Northwestern State that passed away. He had an underlying heart condition. We used a defibrillator. Didn't work. He passed away, whatever. Kid from Holy Cross. Go to his funeral. And the priest at the funeral, and the funeral's in Holy Cross's gym, the old Holy Cross before Katrina. He brings out a football. And he says, all of y'all sad, all y'all crying, don't cry. Be happy. And he takes the football and he spikes it and he says, because he just scored the biggest touchdown of his life. He's in heaven. Be happy. Be joyful. Know that he's in a better place. He doesn't hurt. He is in no pain. He is running down a football field. He scored the biggest, and that stuck with me. And when I walked into the funeral home, into the church, and I saw Big Lynn in that casket, I had the biggest smile on my face. And I'm sure some people were probably like, why are you smiling? Because Lynn's not having to sit in a chair anymore. Mm-hmm. He's not have to do everything from a phone. He's probably telling St. Peter how to run a show, who to let in the pearly gates, who not to run in the pearly gates, like Mr. Porsche always used to say. And they said it at the funeral. Uh-huh. that if I go up to heaven and I get to the pearly gates and St. Peter has a UL hat on and a Ragin Cajun shirt, I'm good because Big Lynn's in. And, you know, Leonard and Lloyd are up there running the show. I mean, Leonard and Lynn are running the show up in heaven. And it's a comforting fact to know that that man touched all of those lives, and he's still touching our lives today from heaven. With just a kind word, a smile, tough love, a great joke, a practical joke, a T-shirt, a hat, whatever it was, he knew what you needed, and that was said over and over again. But Lynn always knew. And hopefully that we in athletics can carry on that legacy, that Lynn. Listen, smile, laugh, and love. I mean, that's basically the Lynn Williams philosophy, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today, BJ. Great stuff.
Thanks, man.